Okay, this is an Exchange Server 2010 tutorial, and this is about how to get Outlook to connect to Exchange Server 2010 from outside the domain. And to do that, what you're going to need to do is use Outlook Anywhere. Now, in my class, we have been able to connect to our Exchange servers no problem using POP3 mail client. We've been able to do it with Outlook web app. And inside the domain, if you have a client that's on the domain, it's very easy to connect Outlook. Let's say you have Outlook 2010 or Outlook 2007. We've been able to do it with Outlook 2007 and 2010, no problem. Connect to our Exchange servers and send and receive email. It should work also with 2003, but we haven't tested it on that so far and been able to get that to work. Okay, so Outlook works great if you're on the domain, your client is on the domain, you're logged in, you'll be able to connect your Outlook program to your Exchange server, no problem. But if you're not on the domain, Outlook is not going to be able to connect to mail on your Exchange server. And if you're, let's say, across the firewall, right, outside on the internet, you're also not going to be able to connect with Outlook to your Exchange server. Now, if you want to do it, Exchange Server 2010 has a feature called Outlook Anywhere, which will enable you to use Outlook and connect to your mail from outside of the domain and also from the internet. And so how do you get Outlook Anywhere working? Well, it's going to take a few steps, and I'm going to cover those in this tutorial. What you're going to want to do, by the way, I'm on my website, danscourses.com. So if you want to see this graphic and see this, just go to danscourses.com. All right. For Outlook Anywhere to work, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have AutoDiscover working on your Exchange server, right? AutoDiscover working. You're going to have Outlook Anywhere enabled. You're also going to need to have a Certificate of Authority SSL certificate, CA. You're going to need to purchase this SSL certificate and make sure that it matches your mail domain name or your website, and install it in your IIS web server. All right, so first of all, to have Exchange working, you have to have IIS server working. So you should have that on your Exchange server, but you're going to need a Certificate of Authority SSL certificate. If you want to work across the internet or outside of the domain, you're going to have to purchase one. You can't use a self-signed certificate just off of your server. You'll have to have a publicly registered certificate from a SSL certificate vendor. Now, if you want to do that, you could use, let's say, a company like this one, cheapssls.com. It's about $9 a year. It's very inexpensive. SSL certificates are a lot like web hosting. You can find something for inexpensive prices, or you can spend hundreds of dollars. It's up to you. So this is one option. All right, and I'll talk about how to do that also. The other thing you're going to need to do is enable RPC over HTTP. It's a feature, and you can enable it using your server manager. And last but not least, test to make sure everything is working. You're going to use your remote connectivity tester tool, and that will test everything, make sure it's available. Things that I haven't listed here is you're also going to need to make sure that your firewall is open, and that that you have the correct ports open on your firewall to be able to run this on your server and, let's say, on your firewall where you're hosting from. You're also going to need to have DNS resolving correctly, and we'll talk about that too. Okay, so let's run down the list. First of all, AutoDiscover. AutoDiscover should be enabled by default, and when you use your tester tool, which I'm going to show you where it is, it'll let you know whether AutoDiscover is available or not. Outlook Anywhere, let's talk about that next. So what we're going to do is we'll just go to our Exchange server. I've got a remote desktop connection to my Exchange server. Here's the server manager, right? And I also have open the Exchange Management Console. And so what I'll do is in the Exchange Management Console, I've opened this up. I'm going to go to Server Configuration, Client Access Server. All right, and a couple of things. You're going to want to make sure that your external client has been configured. So if you don't have an external presence, you're going to need it, right? And so configure external client. You're going to want to run this wizard and run through this and add your server to the client X. I've done this in a previous video tutorial, so I won't cover that. The other thing is you're going to want to click on Enable Outlook Anywhere. And you can see here that I already have it enabled because right now it's on Disable Outlook Anywhere. So if you have it enabled, you'll be able to click on your properties here, and you can see here it's going to show me my external host name, right? This is what I'm going to need for probably my SSL certificate. So if my external host name is dansgames.com, I'm probably going to want that for my SSL certificate. I've got authentication selected, and so that is enabled. Now the client access server also handles the auto-discover service, and I believe that possibly configuring the external client access, that this is what enables it. Now to test to see if you have it working, what you can do is you can also look in your server manager and open up your server manager roles, go down to your web server, right? You can see you have the web server here, and click on that. And you can see that when I select the web server, here's my web server, expand it, right? Expand your sites, default website, and in your default website you should see a folder for auto discover, right? And you can see here that auto discover has been set up because I have a folder for it right here. It's already set up and ready to go here. I've also got my OWA folder, right? So this is my external presence basically over the web for my Exchange server. The OWA, the web app, right? RPC, Exchange, Exchange Web, EWS, ECP, all of these are needed, but there's auto discover. Okay, next on the list is the certificate of authority. So when you go to purchase your SSL certificate, and let's say you go to a website like this and you say I want to purchase it, all right, you're going to purchase your SSL certificate, but for them to make the certificate, you're going to need to give them basically your half of the key pair. An SSL certificate involves a public and a private key pair, and a public key decrypts the private key decrypts the public key, and so you're going to need to give them your half of the key. So to do that, what you're going to do is I'm going to select in your web server, this is done through your web server, you're going to select your web server right here, and you're going to go down to, this can be done from the command line, but it can also be done here. Let's see here. Alright, server certificates. Okay, so I've selected the server here, there's server certificates, and I'll just double click on it, right? And it shows you the certificates that you have installed right here, right? And you can see I have one installed for dansgames.com, right? Okay, so to create the certificate request, what you'll do is to create your half of the key pair, you'll click Create Certificate Request. You'll put your domain name in that you want here. Maybe you'll repeat it for your organization. I just skipped the organization unit, put in your city, your state, click Next, finish the this dialog box, right? And then hit Finish, and it'll output a text file essentially that is your key, your part of the key, and you will upload that to your SSL provider. And they will use that to create the certificate, and then they will give you your certificate. Now, to get the certificate, you're going to need to have an email account on your domain that they can verify that you are who you say you are. So in this case, I'm dansgames.com, so I'm going to need to verify that I am dansgames.com. So you're going to need to have an email account of, let's say, webadmin@dansgames.com or admin@dansgames.com. And with that information, they'll be able to verify that you are who you are, and they will take your half of the key and they'll create your certificate, and they will send you your certificate. And when you download your certificate and you finish this process, you will install your certificate. I'm going to hit cancel right now here by clicking Complete Certificate Request and then linking to your certificate, right? Now right here you can see this is where you create a self-signed certificate. This is not going to work, a self-signed certificate, for Outlook Anywhere across the internet. You need an actual certificate. But you can get one from cheapssls.com for about $8.95 a year, $8.99 a year. There's also tons of providers to do this. That's just one of them. Okay. So that's it for certificates. So you'll click complete certificate request, and there it is. Now, I warn you, you need to make sure that it's the correct domain name, and sometimes you might have to buy a certificate or two to get the right domain name in place so that it works with your configuration. There's a little trial and error there and a learning curve, but it should be no problem if you just follow the steps.